Hi, and welcome back to Walsh University's lesson number 5, Special Effects. And so I'm going to go ahead and get started here with the Adobe After Effects and give you an idea of what that looks like. Yes, I have many tabs open. I'm going to minimize those as we open this here. Adobe After Effects is used in the industry for creating many different special effects, whether it be a simple introduction, an outro, or something that is awe-inspiring and amazing. So once this opens, you're going to just hit New Project. You want to familiarize yourself with some of the settings. We'll just go File, New Project. We did that. Composition, we're going to go New Composition. And so in the composition here, you want to make sure that you have a couple of different things as options. You want to familiarize yourself with the width of the movie screen or any television screen. This is our typical widescreen TV, 1920 by 1080. Again, 1920 by 1080. Our frame rate is 29.97, which is normal for our camera settings typically. So we're going to go ahead and hit OK. Notice the background color is black. The duration we could change. I'm going to change this just to 15 seconds here and hit OK. All right, so you can see it creates our background, our screen. It gives us a timeline, and this is our composition where we will work. So real quickly, I'm just going to go to File, Import. I'm going to import a file. I'm going to bring in this BAM logo here. If you grab these from the internet, some of them will or will not work. Make sure they're copyright free or open source so that you can freeware, so you can royalty free images if you use images or create them yourselves. So you can see that in my library here, in my project library, I have this BAM icon. And to get that onto the screen over here, I simply click and drag that down here to my timeline. And you can see it puts that in. And it's constant, it's stagnant, it doesn't move. To make that move, though, we can click here on this little arrow next to the box and open that up, and you'll see it says transform. So to transform that, what we have here are options of position, scale, rotation, and opacity. To get this to move on our timeline, we're going to click the clock, the timepiece. Initially, we're going to make this start off just a little bit smaller. So I click here. Notice this is linked. I could change the width and the height individually if I unlock this here like that, but I want them all to be together. So I'm just going to click and make it very, very small. Notice it put a diamond here or keyframe. A keyframe is the key to actually making animations and making everything move. So I'm going to then move this out so it increases at about 2 seconds. It will be, full frame. I'm going to hold that frame for 1 second or maybe 1.5 seconds. And again, to do that, I'm not going to change the size of this, which would create the keyframe. I'm going to click that little keyframe there, and it creates one here. These can be moved around after the fact, so it doesn't have to be perfect the first time. And then I'm going to make this go small again. So notice again, I don't actually have to click that if I'm changing the size. So I'm going to reduce the size on that. Let's do the same thing with the opacity. So you can see now if I scrub this, it gets big, it holds it, and then it fades. Okay, so we could keep that out there because it is a POW effect. You don't have to change the opacity, but to do the opacity, just as an example, I'm going to click there on that clock, on the timeline, on that timepiece to create a keyframe. I'm going to set the opacity at the beginning here to 0. And I'm going to have that come in maybe just a little bit sooner, maybe like in here. And if I click this again, it creates a keyframe if I change it. So I'm going to make that 100%. It's going to stay at 100% until it's ready to be removed. And at that point, I'm going to click keyframe and start removing it. So at this point, I will decrease that to about 0. So here's what we've got. And it comes at you, it holds, it stays, and then it gets smaller. Okay. Now, if that's too slow for you, again, you can take and move these all down. So if we want it to happen faster, condense these, bring them all down, so it's much, much faster. And we're almost there. All right, so now if we run this, it's a lot quicker. Okay, so to close that up, we just hit this arrow. We could rotate it, we could change the position of it if we wanted to. Say we wanted it to fly up to the right at the end. So this is where it begins to start moving. We would click that time piece to create that key frame, and then move it up and to the right, and maybe just even create that here. So we've got this now. Goes up and to the right and fades out. Okay, so that's using our positioning. So that's our transform functions on that. This can be done with text just as easily. I did want to show you this as well. If I open this up, if I accidentally double click on this line here, which I just did, you'll see that I'm actually not, I don't have the background in there. The video background is not there. And that's because we're actually on the layer of the PNG, okay, of the graphic itself. To get back to our timeline layer, you want to click on this here, composition comp. So some people get stuck with that and think that they've messed things up. This program, as you can see here, has multiple tools and ways to get lost within the program. Be very, very careful where you click. Even down here, you can see there's multiple things down here, effects, and over here as well, that could really mess you up. We have masking options and other options in here if you're familiar with those. So we're going to actually work with text now. We're going to go to our text function. At 5 seconds, I'm going to put some text in. Okay, so I'm going to click and drag here and create a text box. And real simply, if I go to my characters, you can see I've chosen, I'll just choose that here. You've got options for your text, your fonts itself. Okay, and oops, there we go. My movie intro. And basically, you have to, with my movie intro, highlight the things that you want to change. I'm going to increase the size of this a little bit just to start, and I think that's pretty good to start. I'm going to then come over here to my timeline movie intro piece, and I'm going to open that up. And you can see I've got text options here, which I can change, and my transform options again. So at this point, again, I'm going to take and maybe just start with a scale really small here. So I'll take and reduce that. And then I will also change the opacity here. I'm going to get rid of that rotation. Change the opacity and make that 0. Have it fade in. Have it fade in over 7 seconds to 100%. And I'm going to go back just a little bit and change the scale of this. So then it will hold it. I'm going to put a keyframe in there on the scale, so it holds it for a second, and then I'm going to decrease and have it fade out. So I am going to keep the opacity here for a moment until it starts fading out. I'm going to have it fade out at about 9 seconds. To do that, just drop that down. Okay, and then to actually scale that back, we're going to go back here and make that smaller. And our position, we could actually rotate this as well. So here on our fade, as it goes out, We're going to click that rotation button. There we go. And as it fades, we're going to start rotating it. I'm going to click and drag, rotate it upside down, and come to the end and rotate it the rest of the way. There we go. So I'm going to drag this one in between those so it's somewhat clean there. So we've got this now. Movie intro comes in, it fades and rotates. Okay, so again, I started this at 15 seconds. You can see that it's quite robust. You have a pen tool for masking, and there's a lot of different options in here, like I said again, so be very careful. I'm going to close this, keep this very organized down here. I can get that closed, there we go. Close that, keep this very organized, be very careful. For rendering purposes, I'm going to drop this down to where this ends, as well as this. Okay, so it won't render out black space at the end that is unnecessary. I did want to show you this as well. You can align this to the center horizontally and vertically on the screen. Okay. Characters, obviously, you can change. There's some kerning, leading stuff that you can do in here as well. Change the height of that, and then you also have your paragraphs, whether that is centered or not, which I believe mine was. Yes, it's centered within that box there. So again, take your time. Try not to get frustrated. It may take you a couple times to do it. Do not pick one that is awe-inspiring unless you are familiar with the program. Just pick something fairly simple that will, you may have to do it 2 or 3 times to actually get it right. So the last thing is to export this. So if you go to File, and you go to Export, Add to Render Queued, you can see here that it gives us this here. We want the best settings. We want to lose nothing. And over here, you may have to click and change this. I'm going to call this my intro. Okay, if there is if there's no option here for you to do this, you may have issues. It may ask you, this will not show up if you have not changed this. So be sure that you put the output to and know where it's going. I didn't check to see where it's going. It is going to my network. I do not want it to go there. I want it to go to my, I'll put it in my movies. Actually, I'll put it on the desktop so I can find it real quick. I'll hit OK. Notice it was an AVI file, which it says down here. And AVI is compatible with multiple systems and the internet as well. Then I just simply hit render. It will render this out. You can see it's pretty quick, depending on your computer. And once it's rendered, we should be able to see it on our desktop here. So if we double click that, there's our movie and our introduction. Again, I'm familiar with this tool and application and how to do this, so what I did in a few minutes may take you a little bit longer and your computer as well. So I hope you've enjoyed the lesson. We look forward to seeing you again and hearing from you and seeing the work that you've done. And we hope you have a great day. Thanks again for watching.